Good afternoon. Welcome to the Key to Community. We are continuing our workshops on the election that's coming up on November the 3rd. We want to really welcome you, and it's just so nice to see so many of you have come up from up and down the state of California, even though that we're all sharing this different kind of air quality that we have, hoping that you're being safe and being cautious about being out in the air. But in the meantime, we're going to just spend some time, and it's going to be some good quality time that since we have to stay in the house and things like that, we're just going to have some good time today and really learn some good things for some good information for you to send out to your community. So welcome, welcome. And again, with the California State Library, we also a partnership with them. And thank you very much. And we're moving on now. Next slide.
Thank you, Faye.
I've done that. Okay, we are the Key to the Community, and our project is for the community in working within our community. And we are a nonpartisan organization. We do not tell you how to vote. We just want to give you information that you can share with your family and your friends. There are many ways that we can make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to vote. And our goal is always to inform you, to help you to make up your mind as to how you would like to vote. And our presenters today will be, well, the lady up at the top, that happens to be me back then. There's Rosanya, I'm using first names, and there's Tanya, and then there's Linda, there's Susan, and we have one wonderful young man, William. So thank you, and get ready for a good time. We really put a lot of good work to it, and we are learners with directors and with coordinators. And so we just hope that you will enjoy the work that we've done, that we've stepped out of the box to see what education has given to us. Thank you. How do you know that's not me?
Well, actually, it is. It's all of us, Faye. Thank you for that warm introduction. This is the second of 2 workshops, and we wanted to know of all the people on the call. Holly's going to put up a poll. Some of us may know a lot about voting, some not very much at all. And the Key to Community Project wants to work together that the people who don't know much about voting get help from those who know more. So Holly can, there we go. So everybody choose one of these. Just choose one that best describes you. Do you feel like you know a lot about voting? You know enough to participate. You might still be learning the basics of how to vote, or you might know very little at all. And we hope we have a little bit of every one of those. We get especially excited when we have new voters because they ask really good questions that help the rest of us make sure we're on track. Okay, just how about a couple more folks? All right. Holly, we can end that poll. And those, if you're seeing the box, you can see that we have a nice balance between people who feel like they know pretty much about voting and people who know enough to participate. But this election's kind of got a lot of changes, a lot of ballot measures, so it's always an opportunity to learn more. And we do have some people learning about to vote. And I would just say again, it isn't like you get to a place where you learn about voting. I've been interested in voting and learning about it for 25 years, and still there's always something to learn each election. Next slide. So as Faye talked about, the Key to Community Project is actually got a series of conversations where we're not telling you what to do, but helping you learn together about why to vote, signing up to vote, ways to vote. We covered those first 3 at the August 27th workshop, and we have all kinds of handy summaries from that workshop. And today, the next slide will show you, we are going to focus about what is on your ballot. And to tell us a little bit more about the agenda for this workshop, I'd like to introduce Tanya. Tanya from Redlands is going to unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. I guess it helps if you're smarter than what you're doing. I couldn't find the unmute button. But with that said, I want to welcome everyone and hope that everybody can take some notes, because this is a lot of information and it is overwhelming. So today we're going to go through the agenda. We're going to go and talk about how the ballot will arrive, what's on the ballot, candidates at all the levels of government, proposed laws and propositions, tips to make voting easier, and upcoming events to help you vote. When you vote, please look at the ballot as a menu. Start with the issues you care about the most. You can choose what to vote on, and truthfully, you're not alone. And many individuals are here to help. And that's why we're here today, to help everybody who has any additional questions or any concerns. This is the platform that we're hoping that we can help others to make sure they're ready to vote.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanya. My name is William, and what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking a little bit about your ballot packet and what you'll be receiving in the mail. So every registered voter in California was going to receive a voter information guide from the state. This is a really thick packet that includes a lot of information about the propositions, includes a lot of kind of the legal language of the proposed laws, and it can be pretty hard to sort through. It includes a lot of information. Everyone else will also get some easier to understand information from their county. And that includes a voter information guide. You'll see here on the screen that we have a few different examples from Alameda County, from Santa Barbara, from Placer County. Each of them looks a little bit different. You may have it may be completely gray, or black and white, it might have colors on it. But that's an idea of kind of what you will receive from your county. You'll also receive a sample ballot and an official ballot. And your ballot packet's going to look different depending on where you live. This is an example from San Luis Obispo County of what their sample ballot looks like. And you'll see that this looks very, very official, looks very similar to what you might have filled out if you went and voted in person. Other counties' ballots are going to look a little bit different. So Los Angeles County redesigned their ballot. So this one's designed to look a lot more clear and be easier to understand. What you'll receive, you see on the screen, you'll receive a ballot, you'll receive a return envelope, you'll receive what they call a secrecy sleeve that has information on it. It can be used to block your ballot if you're filling it out in public. And you also receive, of course, the envelope itself. And the things we want you to kind of remember or take away from today's meeting is that when you turn in your ballot, because everyone who's registered will be receiving one in mail this year, you have to be very mindful of where you sign. And so do not sign on the ballot itself. You want to then take the ballot once it's filled out and put it in the return envelope. And on the back of your envelope, there'll be a section for you to sign. Each county's signature box and each county's envelope looks a little bit different. So depending on where you live, it may look different than this. The one you see down here on the left is from Butte County. And so it has a little area here where you can sign. You also have a chance to put in the date and add a little additional information. So if you're someone who has an illness or is unable to turn in the ballot yourself, you can identify someone who's going to turn it in for you. To that end also, this year, because of COVID-19, there are also going to be a larger number of ballot drop boxes. So here are a couple you see in Orange County. They look a little bit different. This one up here is from San Mateo County. And what you can do is you can take your ballot once it's signed, and instead of putting it in the mail, you can drop it off at any of these ballot drop boxes. And what we'll do in a minute is we'll put in a link in the chat to your county voting office, and you can look to see where they are in your community, because they're at different locations depending on where you live. Many of them, though, will be at libraries, which is great. This is just another example. So this one is from a different county. You'll see it looks a little bit different. So the example we have here from Butte County, in this example, look a little bit different, but you're still going to be entering your basic information. So you'll be signing, you'll be dating, you'll usually be writing your name on there. And remember that you sign on the envelope itself, not on the ballot. Very important. Susan's going to tell us a little bit more about what's on this year's ballot.
All right, so in our first workshop, we covered how you register vote. So every registered voter is going to get one of these ballot packets. But what actually are you voting on? And it helps to start with the fact that we vote on two kinds of things in California: people and proposed laws. And the people are at different levels of government. So you're probably aware that we're going to be selecting a president, a member in the House of Representatives for your district, and then we also have our state government up in Sacramento. So you might be voting on a state senator, you'll for sure be voting on a state assembly person, but you'll also, depending upon where you live, be voting for county government officials or city council members. There are 12 state propositions that William and Rasanya are going to help you think about. But your local jurisdiction is a way of talking about your local city or county or place where you live, will have local ballot measures too. For instance, I live in the city of San Rafael, and they are proposing a 1/4-cent sales tax. Next slide. So thinking about the candidates, the people, at the national level, just to take another look at this, as you know, we have a president and a vice president, and also in our national government in Washington, D.C., we have Congress, and that's got the Senate, but we aren't voting for a senator in California this year, but we are voting for our members in the House of Representatives. At the state level, next slide, we may be voting on a state senator based upon where we live, and all of it, state senators serve for 4 years, but state assembly members have to get elected every 2 years. And what William's done here is just shown an example of state senators who are currently in office around the state, just so you get a feel for the different kinds of people who are representing all of us across the state. Now at the local level, you may be voting for a city council member, a county supervisor, a school board member. In some cases, people are voting for judges, community college district, transportation districts. And I think many people don't pay attention to local government, but because of the pandemic, many more of us are paying attention to our county health officers. More people are paying attention to what's happening with sheriffs and police and so forth. So I think this is a year that all of us can work together to learn more about what's happening at the local level. And we would urge you to pay attention to the Easy Voter Guide. The Easy Voter Guide can't give you information about all the detail of your local candidates. We have another great way to do that. But the Easy Voter Guide's a really great place to get some basic information about the presidential election and those national and state offices. And now Rasanya is going to tell you how she uses Voter's Edge. And we recommend everybody use Voter's Edge to understand what is on your ballot. Rasanya? This is a project that we do, or they do, with the League of Women Voters, and they encourage local candidates to put in information.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Hello, everyone. The Voter Edge is pretty intense. So first of all, I want you to pay attention to the tabs at the top. So we have the tabs: election, home, candidates, measure, and voting information. I've used this many a times, and let me tell you how I use it. I actually have two computers side by side. So I'm doing research on the candidates and the measures well, measures and propositions are simple. That's a thought. So you jot that down. What's the difference between a measure and a proposition? Them are questions you could ask yourself, if it's any difference at all. So these things can also be saved. So you see where it says my choice. So your choices can be saved and you can print it out. So if you go down below, so one of the things you want to think about when you think about propositions and representatives, you want to think about, do they meet your same thoughts? Do they meet your same goals that you want to see change? So down below, you know some of the things that's happening in the news about social justice. So if you go down, you see the proposition. We have a lot of proposition that have to do with changing laws. And Susan gonna put in my address because this is how I do it. We put this too. So you would put in your address. And it goes from county to county so you can see what propositions and what would be on your ballot.
And Rasanya, do you want to show people the types of candidates you're voting for? So in addition to president and House of Representative?
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people think it's only just national, it's also local. So when I really pay attention to how law is changed, pay attention to local.
Like you have a judge on your ballot this year.
And I don't know how many people look at the judges that's local that could be passing laws and pushing laws based on how they how their system is ran. So I actually do research on judges. So you see some of these things don't have their message up. So I'm assuming later on when it gets close to voting, it will be up on the ballot. I mean, be up on this website. So when I come to judges, I'm very passionate about this. When we think about social justice, when we think about crime, you need to be thinking about who is pushing this. So, like I said, there is a lot of proposition, and one of the new things on the Easy Voter Guide, there is a part on the Easy Voter Guide that would be that the Easy Voter Guide is focusing on, and that is a spotlight. You see it says spotlight on justice. And you have the sheriff, you have the district attorney, you got judges, and you got mayors and city councils. Now, I don't know if anybody really pay attention to the judges and the district attorneys. When you think about how many people are being incarcerated, you need to be thinking about district attorneys. And, you know, are these people how they actually push certain laws? And also you want to think about who is supporting these laws. Who is supporting these candidates? Who is supporting the propositions? I know it's a lot. It is a lot to think about, but voting is no joke. So I want you to pay attention to buzzwords before I get to these tips. I want to throw that in. Pay attention to your buzzwords. Buzzwords is what I deem as things that moves you to vote. Now, buzzwords is like tough on crime, right? Better education, right? On and on. But don't let that be your motivation to vote for certain things. You need to do the research. They are used to pushing buzzwords on you, but you need to know if that proposition actually going to be paying attention to what you really want to happen. So tips for choosing a candidate, what are their priorities? And now just don't look at what are their priorities, look at what they action. Look at what they already done accomplished. What is their experience around that certain problem? Do they care about the same issues that you care about? Now, I had this issue as Second Star helping people vote. I always said, you don't really know me. So you assume that I believe in certain things. You really don't need to be giving up your vote so easy. Who support them? Who support the candidates and who support the proposition? Look at who's pushing the money, who's pushing the proposition. Pay attention to local election as well as state and national election. Pay attention to your city councils, pay attention to your judges. Don't give up your vote. Now, William is getting ready to talk about the propositions. I'm gonna hand it back over to William.
Thanks so much, Sonia. And so, as Rasanya said, we're going to take a minute or a few minutes to talk about what's on the ballot related to propositions. And before we do that, just as a reminder, I know Susan mentioned it, but Tanya is going to tell us a little bit more about the Easy Voter Guide. That's our primary source for election information.
Easy Voter Guide is a good starting place for information about propositions. And this is an example of how it looks. For each proposition, there's a visual like this, and this is the way it is now. So the proposition will be listed, and it tells you what is current, what the proposition would do if it passes. Then it also would talk about the effects on the state budget. And to the right, it'll state the yes on people who are supporting Prop 14, which is the stem cell research, and no on the people against Prop 14. And at the bottom, it actually states information, additional reference information. What is a bond in this case? And there'll be additional information regarding each proposition if there's reference information at the bottom of the Easy Voter Guide.
Can I ask a
Thank you, Tanya.
question? Can I ask a question?
Go ahead,
Is
Meg.
this Easy Voter Guide online or on paper?
The Easy Voter Guide is online at easyvoter.org. And also paper copies will be available through different libraries and community organizations throughout the state. Normally, when we don't have a pandemic going on, they're distributed pretty widely by community organizations such as churches or community centers, and also by libraries and local governments throughout the state. So you can contact your library program to talk to them about if they've ordered them. And if you want additional information about that, we'd be happy to provide that in the chat.
But you can find it online?
Yes, it's online.
And the link is in the chat box. And for coordinators who did order their free Easy Voter Guides, they'll be shipping late September into early October.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we have the link will be elsewhere, but it's also right here on the front of the guide. It's just easyvoterguide.org. You can also get there by going to easyvoter.org. So both of those will work.
Okay.
And then I know Rasanya touched on this a little bit already, but in terms of which propositions you should pay attention to, Rasanya, do you want to say a little bit more about kind of how to help people think about this as we start talking about what's actually going to be on the ballot?
Sorry. So which propositions should you be paying attention to? You can start with issues that you care about, like I said, or what will affect you. So you can also look at which propositions are getting the most attention. So let's think about what's getting the most attention. So we will touch back on that later. So again, as you go and look at the proposition, the Easy Voter Guide is a way to really get a more clear pictures on that. Think about what's affecting your community, your family, people that you're around. So when you go and read a proposition, include all that before you say yes or no.
Thank you, Rasanya.
William, I just wanted to add that for those who don't know, the Easy Voter Guide was started and founded by adult learners, and they know that if you're interested in a proposition, the Easy Voter Guide won't have all the information you may want, but it's that starting point. Like Tanya said, it's a menu. So William's going to give us a taste of the propositions, and then you'll find out which ones you want to learn more about.
Wait, I want to go back to that menu thing. The menu is like this. When you go, if you went to an Italian restaurant or a French restaurant, you can't read everything on that menu, right? You take, you may not order everything on the menu. You order one or two things. That's how you want to do when it comes to voting. You do not have to vote on everything, but you vote on the main thing and you zoom in on that and you do your research.
Thank you so much, Rasanya. And as Rasanya said, especially years like this, there are 12 propositions on this year's ballot. These are statewide, so every voter will have these on their ballot. And it can be really overwhelming when there's that many laws to learn about, or potential laws to learn about. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to give you kind of a quick overview for each of the propositions. We're going to go a little bit more in depth for about half of them, and we'll provide a quicker overview for the others. And as we already mentioned, of course, the Easy Voter Guide is a great place to start. We also recommend using Voter's Edge as a resource. And both of those will provide a lot more information. So if you're someone who is really interested in doing that research, like Rosanna talked about, there are resources available to help you. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to provide a more in-depth discussion of 6 of the propositions. We'll start with Prop 15 and talk about commercial property taxes. These are some of the propositions that are getting kind of the most attention. They may not be what you personally, though, think is most important. And so there may be other propositions on this year's ballot that also, as Rosanna said, affect you personally, or the things that you care most about. And so we present this, free of judgment. As was noted, Key to Community is a nonpartisan organization, so we don't take positions on these. A lot of folks always ask us, well, how should I vote? How should I vote? And that might be a question that you get either from a learner or a community member. And what we always do is we want to empower people to make their own decisions. So as we go through, you'll see that we have some information. And for each, what we're going to talk about is sort of what the measure or what the proposition would do, as well as why does it matter. So we're going to start with Prop 21, which is about local governments and rent control. We're going to go a little out of order here, and I apologize. But the reason we're starting with Prop 21 is this is one that a lot of folks have talked about in recent years, and it's one that has come up in conversation recently, especially around the pandemic and people's ability to pay for rent. So what Prop 21 would do is it would let cities and counties pass rent control measures that would limit how much a landlord could increase rent each year. And under Prop 21, landlords could raise rent by up to 15% over 3 years for new renters, plus any increase allowed by local law. And the reason that we think this matters, and the reason you might share with folks in your program, is that, of course, housing costs tend to be higher in California. And this is an issue that affects a lot of people. And also that state law right now, it prevents rent control on housing that's built after 1995. And so you can't do rent control on more recently built housing. And what Prop 21 would do is it would change that to apply rent control or allow rent control on housing that's more than 15 years old. And one thing I would just want to mention also is if you have questions, comments, please add them to the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to collect those. We're going to get to a point in a few minutes where we have time for specifically questions. And hopefully we'll have about 10, 15 minutes to talk about those. This is just, an example of what's in the Easy Voter Guide. You'll see here that when you go back to the guide, there's more information about what it would do if it passes, effect on the state budget, as well as those arguments. So if we're curious about what people for or against the measure are saying, we have a little snippet right there of kind of what those arguments are. Prop 16 looks at diversity and affirmative action. And what Prop 16 would do is it would get rid of a 1996 law that prevented state programs from using affirmative action. So those are programs, remember, to assist certain groups of people. And what it does is the current law says that you can't discriminate against people or show preference to people based on certain characteristics, especially related to decisions about employment or public education. So thinking about who gets into college or school. And what Prop 16 would do is it would let public programs throughout the state to consider things like race, sex, ethnicity, the country that someone comes from as part of their decision making. And that these public agencies would also be allowed to create affirmative action programs to help either increase diversity or to help certain groups. You see here that there's a little bit of additional information. This is an area too where a lot of people have strong feelings related to fairness, equality. And so there are arguments on both sides that folks have put forth. And we encourage you to do a little bit more research on this. Also talk with friends and family. These are things that are deeply personal. Prop 15 looks at business taxes. Again, something that's very much on everyone's mind right now with money being tight. And so what it would do is Prop 15 would change how commercial property is taxed by the government. Taxes right now on commercial property, they apply to people who own land that's used for businesses or shopping centers. So that's what we mean by commercial property. Another thing that's important that we've heard from a lot of learners is that Prop 15 does not change taxes on residential homes. So if you're a homeowner in the state of California, Prop 15 would not change your taxes. And the reason it matters is that Prop 15 would apply to commercial property that's worth more than $3 million. And it would tax it based on what it's currently worth, which is a change to the tax system. So it's important to remember that this would not apply to properties worth less than $3 million. And as a result, local governments, which are having a really hard time raising money right now, would likely get a lot of money. So between $6.5 and $11.5 billion more in property taxes each year, starting in 2025. Of course, there are lots of arguments for and against adding taxes. People have very strong feelings about that. Of course, people also think about how they or businesses they know in the community might be affected. Those are all things to consider as you vote on Prop 15. Prop 22 is one that's got a lot of buzz. As Rastania said, it's one where there's been a lot of buzzwords. There's a lot of advertising. And so what we wanted to do is take a little bit more time to explain this measure because there's so much interest. In terms of the way it is now, there are rideshare and delivery companies throughout the state. You've probably heard of a lot of them, such as Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash. And those companies currently hire drivers as what are called independent contractors. So independent contractors, they get to choose when, where, and how much they work. They get to set their own schedules. Employees, on the other hand, are people whose employer sets their schedule. The difference, though, is that employees get benefits and protections that independent contractors don't, which include things like minimum wage, overtime pay, and sick pay. And in 2019, the state passed a law that requires these companies, rideshare and delivery companies, to hire their drivers as employees. Uber and Lyft have refused to follow the state's new law, and so the state attorney general and 3 cities are currently suing those companies to try to force them to follow the law. And what Prop 22 would do is allow rideshare and delivery drivers to stay as independent contractors. It would also require that rideshare and delivery companies would have to pay drivers close to or a little bit over the minimum wage for the time they spend driving. It would help pay health insurance costs for contractors, and it would help pay medical costs for drivers hurt while working. The thing to know about Prop 22 is that the companies that it applies to, they don't really want to follow the state's new law. And so what they've done is they've put Prop 22 on the ballot as a way to help not follow that law. So they're currently spending, as of yesterday, they spent more than $182 million supporting Prop 22. So you're going to probably see, if you haven't already, lots of advertisements on radio, television, on the internet. And Uber and Lyft have said that if this measure doesn't pass, or if they have to follow the state's new law, they might leave California. That's, of course, something that you can judge on whether or not that has merit, but it's something to be aware of. In terms of drivers who'd be affected by the law, they have different opinions about the state's new law. So some drivers want to stay as independent contractors. They like the flexibility of the scheduling. They like the fact that they can work when they want. Other drivers have said they really want to become employees. So a percentage of people who drive for these companies, they work 35, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And so they wish they could have things like health insurance or other benefits. The other thing I would want to mention, because we've talked about the role of local government, is that Prop 22 would also limit cities and counties from putting new rules on rideshare and delivery companies. So if you're in a city where there's been conversation about the way rideshare and delivery companies operate, Prop 22 would limit the ability of your local government to make new laws. Again, here's some arguments for and against. We would encourage you to check out the guide, do a little more research. This one has a lot of information behind it. Prop 20 applies to criminal penalties and parole. And this one just requires a little bit of background as well. This may be information that's familiar to you, but we mentioned it in here also so people can come back to this presentation later if they want. So for Prop 20, it applies to felonies and misdemeanor crimes. And felonies are considered kind of the most severe crimes. Less severe crimes are called misdemeanors. And when people get out of prison for a felony, they often have to spend time on parole. This is usually 3 to 5 years. They meet with a parole officer. They might have to do things like mandatory drug testing and counseling. And over the past 10 years, lawmakers and voters in California have reduced punishments for people convicted of some nonviolent crimes. And this has also let some people out of prison earlier. What Prop 20 would do is it would undo parts of those crime laws that were passed over the last 10 years. It would take some petty theft crimes and it could allow them to be punished as felonies. It would also mean that people convicted of stealing certain items worth between $250 and $950 could be sent to county jail for up to 3 years in some cases. And also it would change the ways that people are released from prison. So it would change the factors that are considered for early release. And it would limit early release for people convicted of some felonies, including things like domestic violence. The state would also collect DNA from people who are convicted of some misdemeanor crimes. And the thing to remember about this is that, as Rasanya was saying, communities across the country are talking about criminal justice and the justice system and trying to make sure it's safe and fair for everyone. And so Prop 20 would strengthen penalties for some crimes, make it harder for people to get out of prison for others. And so this is something that you could consider being obviously within that context of criminal justice. Are you personally someone who feels strongly about the way these crimes are going to be changed? Do you want to see fewer people in prison, or would you like to see harder penalties? The thing to remember too about Prop 20 is that if it took effect, it could increase costs for local law enforcement, courts, and the correctional system. When you look at the Easy Voter Guide, you have a breakdown of what those costs might look like, the effect on the state budget. This is an area too where I've gotten a lot of questions this year because people are very concerned about money. I think we're all concerned about money. And so I would encourage you to do a little bit of research on how measures like this affect the state's budget. Oops. And lastly, we're going to look at Prop 25, which asks voters to decide if the state should get rid of bail. So when people are charged with less serious crimes under the state's proposed system, they would be released from jail without having to pay bail. So if someone's charged, for example, with stealing something, they're not considered a risk, they'd be released back into the community with an understanding that they would have to come back to court for their trial. And then courts would also decide if people charged with more serious crimes should be released. So you would probably not see someone released for a really serious violent crime, but you might see cases where the court's trying to decide, should this person stay in jail before trial? Should this person be allowed to be released? The important thing is that Prop 25 would mean that the state would get rid of bail. So no one will be paying money in order to get out of jail. And pardon me, the reason people care about this in particular is that bail, the current bail system, where people can pay money to get out of jail before trial, it can be really harmful to people who are poor. So if you don't have money to pay bail, you might have to stay in jail. And the thing to remember about Prop 25 is it's asking you to vote yes or no. And this can lead to a little bit of confusion. So if you vote yes on Prop 25, it means that you would like to get rid of the state's current bail system. Voting no would keep the state's current system in place. And so, again, in the Easy Voter Guide, there's more background information, particularly about that process for how people are really released from jail ahead of trial, and a little bit more about what it would do if it passes. So we now have time for some questions and comments. I'm going to just go ahead and pull up here to make sure I'm looking at our chat box. But I would encourage everyone who's on the call here to certainly jump in. Thank you so much, Susan, for adding those links.
Are you going to cover the other propositions, or could you at least put their names back up?
Yeah, we can certainly, if you'd like to have the names of all of them up right now, we certainly can. We're going to go ahead and go through those a little bit briefer fashion, but let me pull those up right here. Yeah, so in a minute, we'll look at the remaining 6 propositions, but we wanted to allow a little bit of time if there's questions, comments, or additional information people want to add to the chat. We would certainly appreciate that. Are there any other questions that folks wanted to ask?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Alan?
Yes, we can, Al.
Yeah, when will the ballots, absentee ballots be mailed?
Sure. Susan, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Al, thank you very much for asking that. Everybody who's already registered now or registered in September will likely be on the list for when these ballot packets that William showed you with the envelope and the whole kit and caboodle will start being mailed by your county elections office on October 5th. It will come to you via snail mail, not email. It will be a physical thing that comes from your postal carrier. They're predicting that it'll take 5 to 7 days. So you might see it as early as the 9th or 10th, maybe a few days later. So that is the thing to be on the lookout for, in addition to the sample ballot from your county and that official voter information guide. I got mine from the Secretary of State.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to excuse myself, but thank you for letting me participate, and nice seeing you, and I'll see you down the road. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Al.
Thank you.
There was a comment from Diane in the chat box about Prop 22, asking about whether or not it would apply to other independent contractors. So I'll just go back to Prop 22 real quick. The thing to remember about Prop 22 is that it applies only to rideshare and delivery drivers. So it would apply to companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. It would apply to companies like Instacart, other companies that do rideshare and delivery services. So if you're an independent contractor working in another field, it would not apply to you, only if you're a driver. There's also a question about online sources around kind of finding information about current polling.
This is Diane. Could I just follow up on that question
Sure.
that I asked? So, did AB 5 roll back, or did AB 5 allow all independent contractors to be considered employees? That's what I thought was the argument before.
Yeah, so Dan's asking about, so the state law that was passed that applies to rideshare delivery drivers also applies to lots of other folks who work as independent contractors. So it was called AB 5 or Assembly Bill 5. you may have heard about this a little bit in the news because it was a big story. And what had happened was before AB5 was passed, the state Supreme Court ruled that a lot of people who had been working previously as independent contractors were misclassified and that they really should have been considered employees. And they used what's called they called it the ABC test, and it looked at 3 different criteria. And the biggest one, the one that you probably should all know about, is it said that if someone's doing work that is part of a company's basic work, the things that they do every day as part of their business, that person shouldn't be considered an independent contractor. And that independent contractor should be doing something outside of what the company would normally do, so providing an extra service. And the examples that they use were things like, if you were going to be working on a short-term basis, doing a special project or designing an advertisement or something like that, then it would make sense that you're working outside as an employee. They said though that other companies, and the vast majority of many folks who are classified as an independent contractor, were actually doing the work of the company. So in the case of a rideshare delivery company, they're providing work as a driver, and so they're doing the company's basic work. The question about AB5 and applying to other companies, Prop 22 only applies to rideshare and delivery drivers. So if another person, if another person was changed to be an employee as a result of that law, AB5, Prop 22 would not affect them.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. A couple questions. One from Holly was about what online sources are best to find information on current polling. Polling on state level elections is always always lags behind national elections. So you'll probably see lots of stories in the next few weeks or coming months that are all about focusing on national polling or looking at major statewide races. So you'll see races on things like governors or major ballot propositions. There are a couple organizations that do polling on elections here in California. We can send some links out. I'll try to add them to the chat in a few minutes. But it's hard to, I can't tell you exactly when they'll be released, but you'll see them usually in the month before the election.
Yeah, and William, I would say that the Key to Community Project really wants to help people dig into and understand the issues. So we tend to spend less energy on the horse race and political polling piece of this and more about helping people understand the issues and how the candidates relate to their issues. But we definitely have some news literacy sources and reliable information sources we'd like to share.
Absolutely.
With you. And I think to stay on track, you're going to need to do that quick run through the other 6. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll take a look at that in a minute. Let's take a quick look here. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to see if there's one other question here from Sheila had a question about if there are information from local government similar to the voter guide. Your county produces a voter guide, so that will be sent out. The Easy Voter Guide is available in multiple languages. And so if you go to easyvoter.org, you'll see that you can get it in several languages as well. Norma had a question about dates. We'll try to come back to that.
And I'll put the link to your local League of Women Voters in, because many local League of Women Voters are developing local information in addition to what you're finding on Voters Edge. They may have local candidate forums.
Oops, sorry here. Looks like our presentation has something askew. Just one sec. Let me pause our screen share. We'll do a new screen share, and this should work. Let's take a look.
And while William's doing that, we recommend, if you're trying to look for local information, again, that link to your local county elections office and the local League of Women Voters. Many programs partner with their local League of Women Voters to do presentations on the measures. And it's helpful to know that the League of Women Voters has an arm that does take positions on propositions, but they also have a nonpartisan voter service. That's their language.
So we're going to take a quick look at the other 6 propositions. As we said, if you go to easyvoter.org, you can get a copy of the Easy Voter Guide and have more information. That's on page 7 through 13 of the other propositions. And so Prop 14 is what's called a bond measure. It would allow the state to sell $5.5 billion in new bonds to help pay for stem cell research. Stem cells are a special type of human cell that can grow into many different types of cells. And so they're used to develop treatments for lots of different diseases. The information too that you'll see in the Easy Voter Guide related to this is that the cost to repay the bonds plus interest, which we always have a lot of questions about, will be $7.8 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's $260 million each year for the next 30 years. And of course, that's a small percentage of the state's overall budget. There's also Prop 17, which looks at voting rights for people on parole. As we talked about earlier, if people commit a serious crime, they're often on parole when they leave prison. And around 50,000 people are currently on parole in California. And under the state's current law, people who are on parole can't vote. What Prop 17 would do is it would allow people to vote while they're on parole, so they could register, they could vote in elections. And then depending on the crime they've been convicted of, certain people would also be allowed to run for office. Prop 18 is also about voting rights. It's about voting rights for 17-year-olds. So under the current state law, 17-year-olds can pre-register to vote in California, but they can only vote if they've turned 18 by election day. What Prop 18 would do, it would allow 17-year-olds to vote in primary elections or special elections if they'll be 18 years old by the general election in November. And as a reminder, this only applies to 17-year-olds who are U.S. citizens and residents of California. And the impact of Prop 18 is that, of course, it would increase the number of people eligible to vote. It would also allow 17-year-olds throughout the state to vote, which could have an effect on elections. Prop 19 looks at changes to property tax rules. It would allow homeowners who are in special groups to keep lower property taxes when moving. Those special groups include people who are 55 or older, people who have a disability, or people who've been impacted by a natural disaster. It would also change the property tax rules for people who inherit homes from their parents or grandparents. The reason this matters is that some people think that lower property taxes will encourage people to move to smaller homes when they retire, or to stay in the state or in the region if they lose a home in a disaster. The measure would also provide millions of dollars each year for local governments. So it would provide money for schools, counties, and cities. Prop 23 applies to kidney dialysis clinics. And those clinics provide a service to folks whose kidneys have stopped working so well. So they have to have a special treatment called dialysis. And Prop 23 would put new rules on those clinics related to their staffing, the reporting they have to do to the state, and then the services they provide. Some people feel that new rules on dialysis companies would improve safety, help protect dialysis patients. Other people worry that some companies may close some of their clinics or try to charge more for treatment if Prop 23 passes. So we would encourage you, again, read up on this law, see how it affects, and talk with people you know as well. Prop 24 looks at changes to what's called consumer privacy. So as we know, companies throughout the state, especially tech companies, they collect what's called personal information. That's information maybe about your location, your health information, where you live, how much money you make. Tech companies also have access to things like private communications or that GPS data, which makes people particularly nervous. Prop 24 would give California residents more power over how companies collect and share their information. You could then, under Prop 24, you could contact a company to prevent them from sharing some of your personal information. There are folks who have different opinions, though, about Prop 24. So again, we would encourage you to read up on this. And again, use the Easy Voter Guide as a starting point. Finally, for some tips on making voting easier, we're going to go over to Tanya.
Thank you for all hanging out as much as you guys can. It's a lot of information and it's overwhelming, and there's a lot going on, 12 propositions, and it's literally changing our day-to-days once this election passes. I would suggest that you refer back to this webinar and also the Easy Voter website. It seems to be really helpful. I've been educated in so many ways. I've never been this educated when it comes to voting. So I'm really excited to vote for the propositions, and I will definitely take some time because it's not something I'm going to sit in one day in one sitting and decide of what I want to vote for. But do remember that it is the menu, and we don't have to look at it as far as overwhelmed with so many options. We take one thing at a time, and you're not alone. There's many individuals like myself, and I'm sure like the audience and through the state. So we're here to help. There is the library, the literacy program, the key to the community, the Easy Voter Guide, your county elections office, and we're gonna have upcoming conversations on October 9th and 27th. And remember, it is 100 years of celebration for women and being able to vote. So take this opportunity to keep voting. It's 100 years of celebration. Don't be afraid to ask for help and continue changing your journey as many of the residents in California and our nation.
Thank you, and now to Linda.
Hi, welcome everyone. This is a very important part. We have information to share, so you need to share. Spread the word in your community. Share all these voting resources across your program and your library's websites, newsletters, email blasts, and that curbside service. That's what we have going on in our Berkeley Library. Please, if you can, plan the virtual, good old Zoom again. Let's talk about voting sessions. Invite your community partners and social service agencies. If you already have a foot in the door, it's really important. Just go out there, maybe like a cold call, but it's not. If you have relationships with the community, please like send them website links, send them attachments. Go out to Head Starts, go out to adult schools. Include voting as a topic in your regular library story times, your family literacy activities, conversation clubs, and adult services, teen services, children's services. Just spread the word with all the contacts that you have that you trust and know will benefit from getting this information.
Thank you, Linda.
Oh,
Sorry, we just realized we covered a lot, and we have the earlier Getting Ready to Vote workshop, which has more about why vote and some of the voting rights history that Tanya pointed to just now, and then also all the information about registering to vote, including someone asked, you can request your ballot and all your official voter information materials in multiple languages. There's so many different options. Elections officials are trying to make this accessible, but we know we couldn't cover everything. So now Holly's going to put up a poll just so that we can find out. As Linda said, there's so much information we've already got posted and more information coming, but what more would you like to have information about? And we've got that October 9th session coming up. So would people like, you can check more than one, I believe, Holly, right? So do you want information, more details about how to vote by mail and vote in person? Do you want more information about the state propositions that William just walked us through? Do you want more information about how to get information about those local candidates? How to get, whoops, it looks like something got cut off. How to get reliable, nonpartisan information and less fake news. That's what that one is. And then ways to engage your family and friends in voting, like Linda talked about. So take a moment. We have less than half of you have weighed in. And this is what we do at Key to Community. We keep designing things based upon what you tell us you need for your community, your students, your family. All right. So we've got 42 of you. Let's everybody just, this is a chance to weigh in and let us know what else you might want.
Or Susan, I'm also thinking there may be people who feel that they received enough information.
Yes, and that's okay too. And and that's the whole thing about Key to Community, that is we're trying to do it in bite-sized chunks. So for some people, just enough is good. Others want to go deeper. So thank you. So it looks like we got 3/4 of the folks voting. And we also, if you don't see a suggestion on there, please put it in the chat box. We love the people who've been putting their questions in and engaging actively. So we see that there is interest in the local candidates, and that is exactly something we're working on, making it easier for you to access the endorsements of your local newspaper and your leagues and other groups. It's easier to, a lot of websites for the national candidates and state, but the local is something we really are glad that you're interested in, as well as these other topics. And I believe I'm handing the next slide over to Faye.
Hey, Faye. Hi, Carmen. Faye's tutors just jumped on board there.
Right.
Miss Faye.
And while Faye's unmuting, this is just a reminder of the wisdom you have already heard from Tanya and Faye and Rasanya, that the Key to Community project started because people thought it was a test, like going to the DMV and you had to answer every question. Your ballot will count, even if you choose to just vote on a few items. We do want you to fill in those circles very completely, whichever ones you do vote on, that helps. And you're in charge. And even though your vote is private, don't try and do this by yourself. There's so many issues to talk about. We really encourage you to talk with others. Do we have Faye?
Yeah, I've been here.
Okay. Sorry, we didn't hear you.
Okay.
So,
I just want to say to everyone that we have gotten a big plate full today, but you have the opportunity to go and take a little bite at each thing that you received today. Also, we want to let you know that you don't have to vote for everything. Everything may not fit you or your family or your community. The most important thing is for what is best for you, your family, and your community. And you choose on what you want to vote. You might have someone helping you, but it's your choice, it's your voice that makes the difference. And even if you want to have private talks with your family or anyone that you can get more information on about, there's things on the internet. Everybody doesn't have access to the internet. So please go out and speak with someone, because somebody knows a little bit of something. So we just want you to vote. We're not going to tell you how to vote. Use your voice, but do vote. Next. One of my favorite quotes. We are all learners and we are all teachers. So we learn from when we are young people. We learn how to brush our teeth. We learn how to tie our shoes. And so we are being taught at an early age. And so this is what we're all about. Learning is lifelong. And here is the big part, the most exciting, is that you have the opportunity to register to vote by register to vote California .california.gov, and you can go on there, and this particular website will let you know if you have voted, if you have not voted, how you vote, whatever name that you have registered, that's what they're going to send you, and that's what they'll be looking for. So if your name is Josephine and you go by JoJo, Josephine is what they're going to look for, and not JoJo. Always asking you to visit the Key to Community organization. We're always updating. There's a lot of good things on there. The presenters that you've had today, we are all learners, and we thank the library system for making it possible for us to be leaders now. And I just want to, give homage to my director, which is Linda. And then I have my tutors on who has been on vacation, but she came on today and we'll see each other. And I'm just happy to have Carmen with us. She has brought me a long ways. We've been friends. We've been tutoring with each other. We're going on 7 years. So we have a good relationship. Now, coming down to 22nd of September, a very important day. As you know, just a few weeks ago, we had the opportunity to open up all of this discussion that we are having. And we had Betty Salskin to be our main speaker, who is the oldest park ranger in the United States, who will be 99 years old on September the 22nd. So we're going to have a birthday party, plus it's a national voters registration day, plus we are 100 years women of 100 years being voters. So it's a very special day. We hope to have you come. It'll be from 12 to 1. And so we made a salad at our last get together. So we're gonna eat our salads and bring our salads. Hi, Amy. And then on October the 9th at 3 o'clock, we will have our, there's a group that comes together just to talk, to see how we feel, see where we have grown, see how we can help each other to help our community. And October the 27th at 6 p.m., we will have a roundtable. We're encouraging you to have your tutors, your learners, and anyone that could is welcome to come to this roundtable, that we can finalize and get ready for our election, to get ready to vote on November.
Thank you to Richmond, Leap, and Abigail for the birthday party. I want to say thank you, Abigail.
Yeah, Linda. Thank you, Linda. Richmond Leap, I'm sorry, we've been so involved with Key Community that we have people coming on to join us, and so the Richmond Leap is going to leap and take on the next.
Right.
thing that we're going to have on September 22nd. Again, I just want to thank everyone who has come, who has taken your time out to be with us. Again, as I said, my hat is off to all the learners that are on and all the coordinators and all the tutors. We love you, we appreciate you, and we know that learning is lifelong. So as long as you're here and as long as we're here, we're going to continue to learn. Vote, vote, vote.
That was amazing, Faye. And we're a couple minutes over, but I didn't tell Faye, Amy Prevedel offered to make a closing comment and
Oh, that's my last, she's one of my directors. Yes, Amy, I bow to you.
Right, and as Amy unmutes, and I'll say that the Key to Community team is willing to hang around a little bit after if you have some burning questions. And also just a reminder, thank you, Carmen, for the shout out. You do not have to wait until November 3rd to vote. We can vote early, and that's something we're going to be talking about again over the coming weeks. About
Thank you, Holly. Holly, we thank you.
So, Amy.
Oh, really? There's nothing I can add on to what our friend Faye just said. Please vote. And I'm delighted to see the learner leadership at play in developing all of these resources and information to help people get involved in their programs. I do want to say that learner leadership is really something that makes our programs special, because we are working with adults who have amazing experiences, and every day we're all like learning more, finding a voice, learning to lead. And so I just appreciate the wonderful job that all of you've done across the spectrum of lifelong learning. And so I just look forward to more of this. And I'd love for every program director who's on board today, start thinking about all the activities, large and small, that happen in tutoring, that happen in programming, that really is an opportunity for leadership. And so we're going to be looking forward to more guidance from Key to Community with, just resources and information to really shine at what we do best. And that is highlighting learner leadership, that it's all part and parcel to learning and literacy. So thank you, everybody. I hope.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, take good care.
That's it, Susan.
Shall I stop recording?
I think so. Thank you.